Hello and welcome back to Bite Size Boxing. So today I want to talk about a prospective fight that has been talked about. Allegedly it is looking at landing on that big Saudi card that is being headed by Boots Ennis versus Virgil Ortiz in November. Of course we already know that Anthony Yarde and David Benavidez will be facing off on this card also. But the latest fight that is being rumoured to be added to this card is, should he get through his next fight, Moses Itauma versus Martin Bakole. What do we think of this one? So this is a fight that's come very much out of left field, and it's a fight that definitely carries with it a lot of risk. Now, a lot of people are quite low on Bakole at the moment. Of course, the performance against F.A. Ajagba, he was lucky to escape with a draw. Prior to that, of course, he got sparked out by Parker in 2 rounds. So a lot of people are very low on Bakole now. They're calling him a hype job. And this is something that I really dislike about boxing fans, is because there is absolutely no objectivity. There's no shades of grey with most people. You're either the best thing in the world or a hype job. And the exact same individuals who were calling Bakole the next best thing, you know, the heir apparent, the new George Foreman, and now the same people calling him a hype job because he's had 2 not so good performances. Now, the Joseph Parker one has a lot of context. As much as I do like Joseph Parker, I do think his recent run has been somewhat, I think it flatters to deceive, to be honest, because I see people saying, see, Joseph Parker is one of the best of his generation. Look at what he just did to Bakole. Bakole is the heir apparent, allegedly, and, you know, Parker's just wiped him out in 2, so therefore it's amazing. Of course, you know, forgetting that Bakole flew halfway around the world from Congo on a couple of commercial flights. He had slept about 2 or 3 hours and then literally got on into the ring, jet lagged, and about 40 pounds overweight. So, of course, with no preparation at all, and he hadn't sparred since August. And so this was a guy who had bucket loads of ring rust, should never have really been in there. At the time, they were talking about Bakole stepping in. In hindsight, that would have been a far better replacement, but it was what it was. So I don't read anything into the Joseph Parker fight because his punch resistance would have obviously affected because he hadn't been sparring. He was in gross shape for that fight. But of course, the F.A. Ajagba fight, he was also in gross shape for. And there was a lot less really excuses for that. He just looked piss poor in that fight. He looked slow. He looked cumbersome. And to be honest with you, he just looked like a fighter who had got far too comfortable. He had that great win against Jared Anderson, where he went in as an underdog, let's not forget. He was there as the opponent against Jared Anderson, and he absolutely walked through Anderson. And he really sort of almost old-manned Anderson. And Anderson looked quite arrogant going into that fight. Anderson sort of looked straight through Bakole and thought, this guy isn't going to be much. And Bakole just went and, well, it was like a meat grinder. He chewed him up and spat him out. It was brutal. So on the sort of riding the crest of that wave, Bakole had a lot of hype. But of course, as I said, that hype has sort of died in his last 2 performances. But don't get it twisted. Moses Itauma, for all of his talent, and I think he is a wonderfully talented fighter. I think this is a precocious talent. This is one of the most talented fighters that we've seen in recent years. There is not many fighters that are out-and-out blue-chip prospects, but Moses Itauma is one of them. And I'll tell you how you can always tell a blue-chip prospect. And this is what segregates a good prospect to a blue-chip prospect. This is why I don't say someone like Ben Whittaker, in my opinion, is not a blue-chip prospect. And I'll tell you exactly for why. Moses Itauma, you put him in there with a completely out-of-sorts journeyman who he has no business being in there with. Moses Itauma gets him out there in double quick time. Moses Itauma does not play with his food. Moses Itauma isn't sodding about, you know, dropping his hands and trying to do, you know, an Ali shuffle in front of a bin man who's got a shift in the morning. He just gets him out of there. Whereas someone like a Ben Whittaker, he's doing that not because he wants to do that, in my opinion, it's because he has to do that. You know, when you see a lot of these Ben Whittaker highlights, for example, the reason that, you know, he's dropping his hands, doing all these silly, you know, moves which obviously go viral and, you know, all the rest of it, you peer down in the bottom and it's like, it's in the 7th round and you're thinking you've got some bin man in front of you, why haven't you got rid of him? It's because you couldn't have got rid of him. That's what separates a blue chip prospect and an elite prospect, and a regular prospect. Moses Itauma is a blue chip prospect, with the exception of, I think it was Dobyshenko, who is a very tough journeyman and a very good journeyman. He has absolutely pulverised anyone he's been in with, including Dempsey McKean, who of course took Filip Hrgovic 11 rounds. So Itauma has looked brilliant so far. Of course, we're all expecting him to go through white like a hot knife through butter. you know, don't get me wrong, if this was anywhere near a prime Dillian Whyte, I would think, well, you know, this would be quite an interesting fight. Although I think any version of Whyte with his two left feet and his lack of coordination would struggle with the agility and the sort of movement of Itauma. Dillian Whyte has been looking very poor of recent, of course. He's struggled greatly with Ebenezer Tete, of all people, who, of course, was essentially a cruiserweight who got dragged up for the Commonwealth title back in 2019, I think it was, against Daniel Dubois. He was, I think, barely over 200 pounds in that fight, and since then, he's piled on a load of weight. Obviously, a Ghanaian heavyweight, and if you've seen Ebenezer Tete, I think he's supposed to be about 35 or something like that, or 36. If Ebenezer Tete is 36, I'm a Frenchman. I think we all know what's going on there. Ebenezer Tete is a man probably in his early 50s at best. We know how a lot of these sort of dodgy African passports work with some of these fighters we've seen come over. It's a bit like a lot of the Cubans we've seen in recent years. You know, Ortiz comes to mind. And so it's one of those situations where you've got a Dillian Whyte who is struggling against a man who is middle-aged and awful to begin with. And he's getting hit in that fight. So I do expect Itauma to run through Whyte like a hot knife through butter. So providing that does all happen, it looks like we're getting Bakole versus Whyte. Now, I'm not one of these people who's going to just sit here and say it's a foregone conclusion, because I'd be lying to you. As much as I obviously favour Itauma in this fight, Itauma is the highly touted prospect. Itauma is the person who's supposed to win this fight. It would be remiss of me to think that, you know, Itauma's just going to walk through Bakole in a couple of rounds like Parker did. If Bakole is motivated, if this is a Bakole who's in, say, the 270s, which is allegedly what Billy Nelson is trying to do, apparently they're away now, they're working on getting his weight down ahead of a big fight. If that is right, and Bakole is in the right mindset, this could be a very dangerous fight. And Bakole is the kind of fighter that if you're resting on your laurels, he will expose it. So I think it's going to be very interesting. I think it's a very exciting matchup as well, because it's one of those fights that I cannot in my head picture it being a poor fight. I can't imagine it not being exciting. You know, this is one thing that I struggle with some of my more casual friends who aren't boxing fans, is what boxing match am I going to sit down with you that I know is going to deliver? Because the amount of times I've sat down with them and I've gone, oh, there's some boxing on tonight, stick on the pay-per-view or whatever, we get a pizza, we have some beers, and we're sat there and it's like a 12-round hug fest, and they're just like... Oh. And that isn't a good advert for the sport at all. That drives people away from the sport. So this is one of those fights, Itauma versus Bakole. I will get everyone I know around. I know it's going to be a good fight. There's no way it isn't. You've got a guy who's explosive, who's got amazing dynamism, who has brilliant hand speed, who can punch hard with both hands, southpaw, tricky, able to move, fluid, has everything you want in a heavyweight, against a man who just walks forward and throws punches and doesn't give a shit what's coming back. There is no way this will be a bad fight. So I'm really excited just thinking about it, because it's one of those matchups that, although of course we all favour Itauma, there's no way it isn't a fun fight. I would not be surprised in the slightest if Itauma gets tested, because Bakole is going to test your chin. Bakole is, if you've got bad whiskers, Bakole will find out, particularly if we're dealing with a motivated Bakole. So I'm really excited by this potential matchup, I'm sure you can tell. I'm really looking forward to it if it does come off. It's one of those that I will be marking in the calendar, and I really will be sort of counting down the days for, because providing, you know, Bakole comes in, say, no heavier than 280, we've got a fight. We've got a fight and a half in our hands, and that's what I really am looking forward to. If we get a good Bakole, oh man, what a fight. What a fight. That's one of those... Oh, I can't wait. Anyway, I'm going to stop rambling. You can tell I'm buzzing. But what do you think? You let me know. I'd be interested to know. You take care. Thank you very much, guys. Cheers. Take it easy.